Hey folks, Fernando doing another video for the Modern Survivalist, and in this case we're going to be taking a look at some of the best survival knives available in the market as of right now. I'm not going to be doing anything in terms of custom knives by any knife maker or semi-custom knives by companies that do limited production type of things such as ESEE and some of the other companies, which are great knives. I like them a lot. These are going to be commercial knives available as of right now, and I'll leave the links below if you're interested to purchase these in Amazon. You're also going to be noticing there's nothing really strange or out of the ordinary here. These are all models you've probably heard of already, most of these for sure, and the design of these blades is pretty classic, it's pretty functional. That says a lot, at least for me, of what works and what doesn't. Knives have been around for quite some time by now, and there's nothing really new under the sun. There's just little tweaks here and there making things better, and there's sound designs, and there's not so sound or not so logical designs, which I try to stay away from. So let's get right to it. I'll start with a classic knife that I've always recommended, in my opinion, maybe one of the best knives available, which is the Glock knife. It has been around for some time. It is maybe one of the first big successes of Glock, even before his famous pistol was the Glock knife, which was made by Gaston Glock for the Austrian army. And the blade itself is really nothing new. Yes, it has been designed with input from Austrian special forces, and it's based on a previous successful design. It's actually very reminiscent of some of the knives used by the US military in terms of the M6, M5, M4 going back in time. So it's a very tried and true blade design, more of that combat type knife, but very wide as well. Glock has two models, the survival knife and the field knife. The only difference being the saw on the spine. This one, it doesn't have, it lacks it, but the other one is pretty much the same thing. How useful the saw is, I don't know. Some people like it, some people not so much. Basically the same knife though. So the blade shape is already just a classic blade, and it's let's go metric here, 16 centimeters, I don't know, like 7 inches, give or take, maybe. So it's a narrow blade, but a very wide blade. This knife actually batons very nicely. I have one for my which I use around the house a lot, especially for batoning wood for the fireplace and that sort of thing. It is a very well designed blade, mostly towards the combat end of things, but a nice utilitarian knife as well. So it has a very narrow tip, very strong tip as well, and you can hardly fault this knife. It just works on all levels. It is 1095 spring steel, hardened to, I think it's 55 Rockwell, which is genius because it makes the blade so tough and easy to sharpen as well. No, it is not the latest, coolest, fancy, boutique steel, but it just works. It's 1095, which rusts, but it has a very good finish on it that just makes it black, like you would expect in any military tactical type knife, but not screwing around with anything texture. It's just super smooth and frictionless. It just slides through anything. So even as it starts wearing, it's easy to keep clean, and is of course protecting the blade from rust. No, they're not always in top edge right out of the box. Some of them are razor sharp, some of them not so much. I've had different types of luck with them. This one is razor sharp. It's just shaving sharp as it is, which is very nice. But some may need a little bit of taking care of. It's a narrow tang, but using the Glock plastic, it is super tough and strong. And one of the things that I like, of course, is the price. It's going to be about 25 bucks, give or take, made in Austria. So it's a fantastic knife for a fantastic price. And the sheath itself is very minimalistic, very functional, typical of Glock. Just snaps into place, slides into any molly that you may have. Just genius from Glock. And just like his pistol, his knife has always been a great choice for anyone. Soldiers love this knife. I absolutely see why. Anyone that wants a lightweight knife as well is very well served by this Glock knife as well. Guys, that's it for this one. Let's move on to another classic, the Steel SRK. This is also been around for quite some time. The SRK has been a classic in the lineup for any top 5, top 10 best survival knife. SRK Survival Rescue Knife by Cold Steel. It's now being offered in a carbon steel blade and the ESEE, I believe. I mean, man, both of those steels are okay, but above all of that, it is just tried and true classic clip point blade. You have, what is it, like 6 inches, 15, almost 16 centimeters, and you have a wide blade, saber grind with a no-nonsense grip, just rubber, and just feels the hand nicely. It has these diamond pattern surface that makes it nice in your grip. This is a knife that has replaced the Ontario MK3 for those guys in buds. Navy SEALs using this knife when they're first starting their training in buds. They would get the MK3, which, according to some of the things I've been told, the guys did not love all that much. It was okay, but nothing all that great, and everyone was just getting rid of those and getting themselves an SRK. The SRK is very highly appreciated by soldiers. No nonsense light knife that is just tough. It has a very strong tip, cuts well, just what you need. So this one eventually ended up being a standard issue, as far as I know, for buds and Navy SEAL type. Yeah, so it's a good knife. I have no problems with it whatsoever. The tip is very narrow, little tip, could easily break, but even when breaking a little bit of that tip, you still have the rest of the knife, which is as tough as they come. Just a fantastic knife. Maybe the stainless steel would make a little bit more sense, especially if you're in underwater demolition line of work. But in any case, the Cold Steel SRK, it is definitely one of the best knives available. Another great knife, this one is a little bit more recent for me, the Mora Bushcraft Black. So what is the Mora Bushcraft Black? It's basically your same Mora, just better on a number of levels. You have a carbon steel blade, Scandi grind, typical of Mora. That just works. It works very well for carving. It works very well for all those bushcraft survival tasks. Wilderness survival tasks with this knife, yes, because it's so sharp, it carves so well. You don't have a huge blade, but you have a very light blade, which is nice. What is it, 4 inches and something, 11 centimeters? Yeah, and it is black, but it hasn't got that painty, crappy texture finish that sometimes you have. The SRK has it. I don't like it. It's just easier to keep this type of knife clean, and you don't want friction in your blade. So this one is black, but it is frictionless, which is very nice. Wider than your typical Mora, your clipper or your companion, so it's a wider blade, stronger, stouter blade, and you have the narrow tang that goes into the plastic handle, which is surrounded, wrapped in this rubberized type of material, which is actually like a, if I had to make a bet, it's like some kind of, yeah, synthetic. It's not actually rubber. It's like raspberry neoprene type of feeling that it has, very grippy. So it's gonna be having a good hold when you grab it, and even if wet, it's unlikely to slip in your hand. So it has a nice sticky, tacky texture to it. Very well designed handle, and with a fantastic blade like the Scandi blade that you have here. Again, a great knife. So it's basically your Mora, just better, stronger and tougher. How can you fault it in any way? Made in Sweden. It's a little bit more expensive than your classic Mora, the cheaper ones at least. But in my opinion, worth absolutely every single cent. The sheath is also lightweight, functional, good stuff. Moving on. So we talk about these three. This is maybe the least known blade of all the ones that I have here. This is the Eickhorn Field Knife 2000. This is a more of a recent addition for me, but man, do I like this knife. Eickhorn is a classic knife manufacturer, made in Germany, as it says there. They are the guys that make the knives for the German army and a bunch of other military forces. They just know what they're doing. Eickhorn is based in Solingen, the legendary German city known for its quality blades for, I don't know, hundreds of years now. So they have different knives. The MK2000, I believe, is the one currently used by the German military. This is the field knife 2000. I like the blade in general. It just makes a ton of sense. As I was saying before, nothing strange, nothing out of the ordinary, just common sense, logical stuff. You have a little bit of a wider blade with clip points, very military of them. You have 17, so it's going to be 7 inches and something, almost 8 inches maybe. I don't know, 18 centimeters, and you have a strong blade with an asymmetric grind, which is a little bit unusual, but it is perfectly understandable for a service knife. It's going to be easier for someone that is not used to sharpening knives to keep this knife sharp. Mostly you just have to work this side of the blade, and that's going to be enough. Being asymmetric, just working this side, it's going to be giving you plenty of edge for any utilitarian or combat task that you may have. The handle is maybe one of the things I like the most about this knife. It is very similar, as I was saying before, you don't have to reinvent the wheel here. So it's very similar to the Glock knife handle, which is no invention of Glock. This is a classic handle for a military knife, but it's flatter. So it's being flattened a little bit more, and that is very good in terms of keeping the knife from rotating in your hand. This is not perfectly rounded, but it's a little bit too rounded maybe. Here, being as flat as it is, that extra bit of attention to detail makes it for a fantastic handle. This is a fiberglass reinforced. It's going all the way in here, kept in place by this big screw, and it's not going to be coming loose anytime soon. It's a fantastic type of construction. It comes at a price. This is made in Germany by a very well-known knife manufacturer, and it is what, 100 and something bucks, 150, 120. I don't know, but it's definitely over $100. Is it 4 or 5 times better than your Glock knife? I don't know. That's up to each one to decide. You have a wider blade. You have a better handle. I love the Glock knife, especially at the price range. It's hard to beat. The Eickhorn is a beast of a knife on its own, and it has that wire cutter system where you use the sheath of the knife as a wire cutter. Again, typical German army knife, and it goes in there, and like that. Man, it is a very nice blade, great blade. Moving on, I have the Becker BK7, a knife that Ethan Becker was not crazy about. He was happy enough with his BK9, with his BK2, and then someone approached him and told him, you know what, Ethan, we need a knife that is not so big or so small. We need something in between. Ethan Becker said, okay, what is it you want? Shorting, this is not made up. This is what Ethan Becker said himself in an interview. He said, okay, I'll just make an in-between 7.5 inch or something blade, like my version of a K-bar, I believe were his exact words. So this is Ethan Becker's idea of a combat utilitarian knife. Yeah, like a K-bar, but just stronger and better, I guess. And you have an 18.5 centimeter blade, 1095, with the classic handle from Becker, which is very comfortable. The only thing I could fault it would be that these holes are a little bit too large, and it could be a little bit of a hot spot if you're using knife a lot. And the grip panels themselves are plastic and a little bit too slippery. Could be some people change these for micarta ones or wooden ones. I don't have a problem with that, although I see how something like this, which is a little bit more textured with those lines, it is a little bit grippier and a little bit easier to keep a grip on if it's wet and a little bit more slippery. Other than that, clip point 1095. The only other thing would be that this black texture stuff I don't really like. It is all over the place, especially for especially in American survival tactical type knives. It's very popular, but it is, you know, it is grippy. It is like sandpaper, and it a little bit harder to keep clean, and it's not helping much whenever you're cutting and sliding through a material, because this has more traction. And so if I'm batoning with this knife, this is going to be harder to slide through whatever it is that I'm cutting. I'd rather have something that's very smooth and with minimal traction. That's what I'm trying to avoid in the surface of my knife. But being 1095, it needs some kind of protection, and this eggshell texture type of thing is very popular and very common, and people obviously do like it. Some of these I've seen break on the tip. The tip is very thin, so if you're not careful, you may end up breaking it. No big deal. You have plenty of knife, strong enough, so even if you break the tip there, you still have the rest of the knife. You can keep on using it without a problem, but the tip would be maybe one of the weaker points. The sheath is a little bit too big maybe, but man, the BK7 is a classic survival knife and definitely one of the best offerings out there. I'll end up this with the ESEE Junglas, the larger one of the gang here. All of these are excellent knives, guys, in their own role. You know, if you want something very lightweight and small, or more of a minimalistic, if you want something more of a cheap, tactical, great knife, or anything in between. All of these will fulfill the roles perfectly so. The ESEE Junglas machete, not really a machete, guys. Machete is a lighter blade, it's a longer blade, and it's intended for cutting soft vegetation, which this will not work because it is quite heavier than your typical machete, which you wield for hours at a time. A machete is something else, but it is the name that I've seen it referred to before. The Junglas is still a fantastic big knife. A little bit of a very light clip point maybe going on there. Just a big knife, kind of like a big Bowie knife, and a fantastic handle. This is one of the things I like the most about this knife. It is your classic machete handle, which works beautifully well. Also notice it's not all that different from the BK7. These type of handles where you have a shape that's not allowing you to slip on either direction just works well. In this case, you have a very slight curve and you have enough of a swell here and there in the middle so as to wrap it nicely with your fingers. Even my hand is medium to large. I use large gloves, so even someone who has even a larger hand will not have much of a problem wielding this knife because you still have a little more room there left. This is my Mora, which is soft and has a nice texture, and you don't have any holes so as to have any hot spots while using the knife. It's a full tang knife, very strong construction, 1095. These are made in the United States, and yeah, it's a fantastic knife. It's a saber grind but very high, so you have a great angle for sharpening this knife with a great edge. It's gonna be a good chopper, a good knife for batoning, but just a good old big blade. Again, that texture thing that I'm not super convinced about. 1095 will rust, so you have to be careful with that. This is going to be preventing that to a point, but I wish they would have done something here about the texture. I don't like that extra traction that you have with this type of textured paint. Something more slippery with minimal friction would have been better, but it is what it is. It's a fantastic knife nonetheless. This tip, yeah, it could be a little bit thin there. If you abuse it like crazy, you may end up breaking a bit of it there in the tip, but great, fantastic knife, and maybe one of the best sheaths of all the knives that they have here. It is super convenient, the sheath that it has. You can even adjust the retention, and you can even adjust it to fit it to a MOLLE system that you have. Maybe one of the nicer sheets in the market. There's a shorter version, which I'll leave the link for as well, guys, in case you're interested in a little bit of a shorter version, which I see how someone would like. I just like the classic Junglas. It's a great knife from ESEE. Folks, it's got all for now. Hope you like this little video. Take care. Have an awesome day. See you in our next video.